Hello and welcome to another Campaign 4 reaction video. It's time for episode 2 of the Overture. Along with my reaction, I'm thinking I'm going to do a little prediction for the tables that all these characters end up in. I know I did a tier list last time, and this isn't really a tier list, but I'm hoping it's a little bit of a tool to kind of talk about the episode as I go through. Because with these Overture episodes, there are so many characters that I feel like I need to really split up and try and focus on each one a little bit instead of trying to talk about all the events, because going from a narrative standpoint, it's just so chaotic. And so I have to refocus on the characters. So, I kind of swapped up the order from last time, so to hopefully keep it a little fresh. But we're going to start with Thimble. So, this episode, we finally got some characterization for Thimble. Because in episode 1, she was pretty much in shock. She was rolling death saves for Pete's sake. And it was a lot of reactive to Thiazi's death and to just getting out of the dire situation she was in. This episode, we got some real moments. She was able to finally arrive at the funeral and have her moment with Thiazi. We got some backstory about her being a wedding gift of sorts for, I guess, House Royce's Fae background. Connected that. And then we get some really good characterization later when she, I guess, is part of the Thieves Network, or at least knows her way around the town, I guess. And she's impulsive and really leading the action, which I like. It's really refreshing when a character is not just kind of stomping around or brooding, and they're willing to break the ice and go. Like Laura basically went, "Hey Octus, hey Cadigan, let's go to the Crow Keepers or whatever later," and she pushed the action. They didn't have to wait for Brennan to kind of do it for them. So wait, it was yeah, it was Thimble. It was just Thimble, Octus, and Cadigan who went, and then I guess Valus was outside and just sitting there and didn't join. I think there's some promotional images and stuff of the combat next episode where it looks like Valus will join. So I kind of assume she is also around. But for this episode, it was only Thimble and Octus and Cadigan, I suppose. So yeah, I really like that from Thimble, though, just showing the initiative, showing kind of the peppiness. Kind of, I guess, kind of a typical fairy character, but I liked it. So, yeah, so finally got some characterization. Now, in terms of what party she'll end up in, I don't think, this combat is representative of what the parties will be. I don't think the soldiers are going to be Thimble and Octus and Cadigan and maybe Valus. I feel like it's just kind of a consequence of the overture, not necessarily a preview for the end party. I still think, I mean, I think that Thimble has to be a soldier, right? Just because I guess I'll establish that these tables are supposedly sorted by end goals. And this episode 2 really tried to establish what the call to action was or is for most of these characters. So Thimble is ready to throw herself into investigating what went wrong with the rescue plan, and she's ready to do so head on and into conflict. So in that sense, I think she is a clear soldier in that she's willing to resolve her problems through conflict. So I'm gonna put her in soldier, and I that will hopefully ring true. We'll see. Next up is Hal, Liam's character. So, kind of a weaker showing this episode. Hal did not have a lot to do. He was just kind of playing the house guest. I mean, there was the beginning scene. I expected there was the episode 1 ended on the cliffhanger with this mask, and I guess they kind of resolved it secretly off table or something, because when we get to episode 2, the mask is gone, and either it was a retcon or they did something, and then they had this coffin instead, and Hal was not the instigator, but he kind of just was there when Tharja or Thasia Abria's character poked the box and fainted and all that, and Hal just kind of was like, oh, I guess I'll try and stop you, but then fail, and then kind of hold your unconscious body and be a, be a husband, or be a previous husband. And he kind of just sat around and was was a host still. Didn't really strike out on his own. They seem to be setting up something with these like magic or strange paints that have arrived for Belair, for Hal from the Aussie. So perhaps there'll be something in episode 3 that sets up Hal, but for now, he is one of the more hard to place characters. I think, I feel like he could fit into a lot of these groups. I don't think, unless something happens in this overture still, I don't think he's a soldier. Maybe he could be classified as a schemer. I'm going to put schemer tentatively. It's hard. Again, this is one of the hardest to place because he didn't do much, and his call to action probably hasn't arrived yet. He's not an adventurer yet. He's just an actor. I guess he ripped up the contract last episode, so less of an actor and more of a host. So he doesn't know what to do with himself yet. So hasn't pulled himself into the action yet. And so I'm going to put him as, I guess, a schemer. This is one of the looser placements. Next up, we have Octus. Octus had a lot more to do this episode, and at least a setup for episode 3, probably a big confrontation with his father. So, I guess the main thing Octus did was look through his companion and kind of try and be a protective figure, which is kind of strange. I was unsure of how Octus's character fit in with the rest of the group. Like, he is not from the Falconers, did not fight in the Falconers Rebellion, it seems. Was kind of pulled in by Thasia, Tharja. I cannot. I had it, episode 1, I had Abria's character name, and now it's gone. It's fled my mind. But either way, Abria's character pulled Octus in, it seems, and it's kind of unclear what his relation. I guess he's related to the school, I think, because the father showed up at the school looking for Octus. So perhaps he's just the kind of character who's absorbed in his studies and does not care much for the political machinations of his house, or perhaps he's an open rebellion, or at least personal rebellion against this, what his house stands for, or something. But still yet to be seen. Either way, it's kind of like the good-hearted character. He's still he wants to help. He's trying to protect Thimble. He's trying to protect the group and goes with them to face the Crow Keepers, even though he's kind of on the lam and running, trying to be in hiding and casting disguise self. He's still willing to, put himself into danger, potential danger. So, yeah, I think that was the kind of the main thing I'm excited that he's going to be in combat. I love some necromancers. I don't know how it's going to work. There's a lot of lore stuff with undead being a lot more prevalent in the setting now. So being a necromancer kind of sets him up as, being a potentially a powerful figure. And I don't know, the whole D&D necromancer thing is like, on paper they could maybe like cast, animate dead or whatever, and raise an army and take over a town or something as a like pretty low level necromancer. But role playing wise, that's kind of a rare occurrence. You don't get a chance to do that per se, and so I'm not sure if what rule set they're using. So I think the newer D&D fifth edition rules, necromancers are very different, so that can change things. But either way, maybe it's a custom subclass too. Who knows? I still haven't identified which characters could be custom, although probably Taliesin's. That's He usually likes playing the weird custom class, so that's kind of a given. But yeah, I liked Octus in this episode, and in terms of what table I think he'll end up in, let's see. I I think being like kind of a wizard, it sets up to be a seeker, and I feel like he's not one he's not a soldier in that he's not immediately like, oh, let's go beat some people up, but he's not I feel like he's too innocent to be a schemer. So, and of course, this could be a facade. There could be something deeper. But for now, I'm going to put Seeker just because that feels like perhaps the most logical destination of this character. High arcane knowledge, a interest in perhaps the craft of necromancy as opposed to like the political implications. Not well politically connected, and not a soldier. So it must be Seeker. That's the reasoning. So next up, we have Taliesin's character Bolair, and they got some juicy stuff this episode with the whole Loy wing, and they grabbed this coffin from the intro, and they Bolair and Murray got in the carriage and went to this Loy wing, and kind of the description of like being this mystical museum was cool. I guess it's kind of like, in a way, like not SCPs, but like, there was like an old show I watched, like Warehouse. Was it Warehouse 13 or something? Something where they had a warehouse of weird mystical objects that they stored, and like that's the vibes of this whole museum thing, is that they just have a bunch of arcane craziness that they got to put somewhere, and the political powers that be know it's all this rampant magic is important, which is why they're funded probably. But yeah, so it seems like Bolair's a warlock, and it's unclear who their patron is. So there was like a scene where Bolair goes, "Oh, I check on this thing," and Brennan's like, "Oh, it's a little bit more, it's deteriorating faster, a little slightly faster," I think was the wording or something. So maybe there's some big lore significant thing, or maybe like a trapped celestial, like, or a trapped piece of a god or something that Bolair knows about, and it is the warlock patron, but still unclear. Obviously shrouded in mystery, as all Taliesin characters are. But I liked kind of the characterization stuff, kind of this weird creepy dude who is like doing this weird stuff, and trying to contain it, and very sits and reads in a creepy manner. There was a little bit of like the scenes with Murray and Bolair, where they were like trying to investigate this coffin. It felt a little bit lost, in the action, like pretty much Murray just cast Identify, and I guess Bolea rolled Arcane, and it's a really hard thing to role play. Like, oh, what exactly? You need to get a really clear image of the object you're looking at to try and like describe the investigation process. And it kind of just ended up being, oh, do you open this coffin or not? And they do, and then Bolea sticks a tool in it, and that's the whole the whole investigation process. So it's a little bit of a hole in that, like, it's hard to create action like that in a fully imaginary situation with an imaginary object about lore that is mostly unknown to like the players and the audience. So for what they had, I think they did a good job of trying to create excitement, and it gave an opportunity for Brennan to explain all this roaming celestial rabbit, like crazy mad entities roaming around, and set that up before the Wick scene later in the episode, and perhaps make it at perhaps it could set up Boleo, like maybe it's related to Boleo too, but definitely something going on with the Celestials as well as the realm, these mists, and the psychopomp entities that are like ferrying people between the living and the dead. That's a hook for Valus, that's a hook for Boleo. So that could possibly mean it's on the same team. Anyway, I think in terms of table that Boleo could end up in, again, maybe a little bias, but it's got to be Seeker, right? Like, if there's a character that's a Seeker, it has to be Boleo. Surely. The character about finding weird mythical artifacts and perhaps learning more about the lore of the world. It's got to be Boleo. And in that sense too, I mean, I think Murray is set up the same way. Although I could see a world where Murray gets into Soldier just because of the gung ho attitude of Murray attacks the problems head on, and that's could be a Soldier trait, But yeah, so Murray's also great this episode. Kind of tied at the hip with Bolea for most of the scenes. Had that whole investigation scene that was cool. I liked the dynamic of reckless, overly cautious and reckless researcher in the same room doing the same thing, and kind of being kind of their own weird people. But in addition to that kind of whole lore delving scene, we also got, I guess, possibly the setup of the conflict for the Seekers, or a conflict for even like the soldiers, is that this privatization of the public service of this college that Murray works for is trying to be taken down or put under the wing of the noble house. I forget the specific name of the German guy that was pushing for this, of one of the sundered houses who's pushing, but nonetheless the noble houses are taking over, and that's probably going to be the plot hook for multiple of these characters, like Boleo, Murray, probably Luis's character, Azune, and yeah, so that could signify that they end up on the same team. But yeah, so kind of setting this up, and I like that the player reactions were very, oh shit, this is just like real life, where our our public institutions are trying to be privatized by the government and stuff like that. So I think, for me, I would maybe rather distance myself when I'm looking at a fantasy world from like the real life institutions. But obviously I think Brennan is weaving in these real life kind of dangers and villains into his fantasy setting. So we have the human organized religion, and we have the government or big money or big private interests taking over public and civil services, which is really crazy for a D&D villain. But hey, I think Brennan has shown in his previous campaigns that he knows how to run that kind of villainy, and it'll be, up to the cast to see how that develops. So yeah, I'm also putting Murray in the Seeker category, I suppose. So yeah, so Cadigan, also another character that had a bit of a lighter episode. He kind of showed up, hung around the back, uh, drank, ate, cut to the woods where he, I guess, was so drunk that he doesn't remember. To me, that was like, it looked a little bit like Robbie was zoning out during other people's conversations, and I don't blame him. His character was not. His character does not feel as connected in that there's not other characters that are obviously trying to interact with him. So he was a little bit kind of zoning out in the back. I think narratively he tried to go, oh, so Cadigan would not drank heavily after the funeral, and so remembers very little, which is perhaps reflective of how the player felt. But still, I think for what scenes he did have, they were strong. So I liked the more establishment of this Wulfric and Cadigan dynamic of Wulfric being really the driving force in Cadigan's life, which is cool. And there was also some kind of lore stuff going on with the companion, like a Bria tried speaking with animals to Wulfric, and it was like, ooh, something's going on there. It's not a normal wolf. So, I mean, long shot predictions, long lost brother, long lost companion, part of his consciousness got trapped in a wolf. Those kinds of things. Maybe something more personal is what I would predict, which could be explained like why Cadigan is a little bit of a mess and Wulfric seems kind of put together, is that maybe his personality got split or something like that. But it could just be the dynamic, and they could just be just long lost or long traveled and historied companions. Who knows? But in terms of group for this character, I think it's hard. I think it's a tie between Soldier and Seeker. I know Seeker's getting a little bit populated in this list right now, but to me, it's just the most logical for a lot of these characters. Another character that motivations are unclear. I guess he fought in the rebellion, right? So maybe that would set him up as a soldier. But also, he doesn't seem like, I don't know. He doesn't seem moved very much. Maybe it's just the way he's deflecting his emotions for the Aussie's death. But I think tentatively I'm gonna put him soldier because I think that fits more than Seeker. Seeker, the Seeker vibes are mainly from episode 1 when he went in and cast Clue, because I feel like if you're making a character creation like, oh, I'm going to be a soldier or I'm going to be one of these groups, and you choose this spell that is only utility is like tracking people or finding evidence at a crime scene, that kind of sets you up to be more political intrigue. So that could be an argument for not being soldier, but still, I think it's not a lot to go on. So I still think soldier makes the most sense, as he literally was a soldier and he doesn't have anything else going on, it seems like. And also he's following Thimble, so that could be indicative, is that his one character goal is following Thimble, and I think Thimble is kind of firmly head-on soldier mentality. All right, so next up, so Tyranny and Wick. I'm gonna kind of talk about them in tandem. So we had the scene where Taylor showed up and offered his services and had this whole like weird like nat 20 healing this peasant guy who got hurt from a crate, and having this holy scene that felt like it was almost comedic, like it was kind of over the top, a little bit unclear how, like, I guess Taylor uses magic. Where are all these people getting their magic, or what are their source of magic? I guess they can just do it through, science. It's like science. It's just like woven into the universe, so they can use it. Taylor is a paladin, so who is he drawing his power from? Is it just the ideals of being a knight? Is that how paladins work in this world? It's so unclear. Like, for Valus, you can go, oh, she's a paladin of this life god, and so she's kind of still drawing some power from her, or maybe the power from the elves who believe in her still, that kind of thing. But for Taylor, there's enough unknown that's kind of unclear. It could be like he's kind of an exotic race, so there could be something inherent in his racial background in this setting that give him paladin magic. Still unclear. Anyway, setting up this kind of, I guess, Wick x Taylor dynamic. Who knows? But Wick was pretty, like, the dynamic kind of switched. It seemed like Wick was driving the action a lot more in episode 1, but now it felt like Tyranny was driving the action, where, Tyranny had to wake Wick up, and Wick was like disheveled and a mess, and Tyranny had the scene with her sisters, and she was like, oh, Tyranny really knows what's going on with this family, and Wick is completely in the dark. And so you kind of are already recontextualizing her antics in the first episode to be like a legitimate kind of counter response and trying to protect a Wick here. So yeah, so Tyranny now, instead of being impulsive, or less being impulsive and random, I guess, in a summation, it's more passionate, to contrast the harsh realities of the whatever the fuck's happening in this fucked up family. So I already like that a lot more than episode 1, and I really like that it was actually tied into a narrative and character purpose, not just a personality trait. That's what I like. So, excellent. Tyranny, great. And we get the big Wick lore bomb, I suppose. This could have been like a multi-episode slow burn reveal. I really expected when Wick first came in episode 1 that this was going to be his character. He's going to be a complete, like, faithful servant of this religious faith, and later in the series there'll be this big reveal that his family is corrupted. To a viewer, obviously everyone knows that the family's evil, but it's kind of the contrast that the character is going for. Now it's like we got the lore bomb immediately. Boom, he's no longer a sheep. He's gonna be inducted, and he's revealed this crazy celestial angel situation, and being bled dry. That was really sick imagery. And yeah, so it's really unknown how Wick's character is going to evolve from that. Are they still going to stick to their faith? Are they going to go, I reject kind of the crueler aspects of it, but I still believe in the main message that I've been preaching. is he gonna like get on board? This is the least likely option, but he could, I guess, join the family. That's probably not going to happen just because that would make him evil. So ignore that. Third option, I guess, is completely lose faith and go a different direction. That I feel like it's between either redoubling down on your own version or being completely jaded with it. And now that we know he's like I guess an Azamar, a part celestial literally, but the celestials in this world are fucked up. It's crazy. So now we definitely know he's not a cleric. Big surprise. He's definitely gonna be a sorcerer. That obviously, 18 charisma. Come on, but we'll probably open. I assume we'll open up with some kind of reaction from Wick, and hopefully give him more of a direction of where his character is going to end up, because character motivation wise, it's now blown open. He could, I think this could kind of paint him as a schemer, or at least like trying to be more engaged with the political intrigue of these noble houses. Or it could set him up as a soldier, as someone who's going to use his, I guess, sorcery or whatever innate magic that he has in a direct confrontation. Tyranny, on the other hand, I think Tyranny has to be a schemer, right? Because, as much as she's impulsive, I think from this episode she showed that she had like a more complete grasp of the political intrigue. And for that engagement, I think it's schemer. So I'm gonna put, yeah, I guess I'll put both of them in schemer. Although I think easily they could split up. I don't know if their plan is to have these characters be in the same party necessarily the whole time. Like I could see Tyranny schemer, and then Wick could go soldier, or something like that, or perhaps like Tyranny, some split. I don't see Seeker for these characters. Maybe I'll eat my words, but I really don't see Seeker. So yeah, I'm gonna put him in schemer. But all being said, amazing lore bomb. It was really cool. But I am worried about blowing their load early, so to speak. Like now that this huge backstory beat is all told for Wick, how will the character proceed? We'll just have to see. There's 2 more Overture episodes, and if they continue with this pace, there's going to be plenty of character motivation available. So we'll see. But moving on, we have Valus. So another character that was kind of a ghost this episode. They had a little bit at the beginning with this coffin, and they showed up and they watched and they observed, and then they were kind of vaguely threatening, and then they went to sleep or went into trance and were never heard from again. All right, I think they literally just forgot, or maybe they had some conversation off screen that that she's going to be secretly following the group as opposed to sitting outside the whole time. But either way, as I said at the beginning of this, that I think she's going to enter the combat with Thimble, Cadigan, and Noctis for sure. Because in the promotional footage, that's what they showed. That's what I'm going on. Unless it was complete all B-roll footage, but I don't know. It seemed like the promos for this overture so far were from all 4 episodes. So going from that, she's going to be in the combat next episode. There's also there's also the connection between, it was interesting that, we established these elves, the elves trance, normal D&D stuff, but still good to establish that she doesn't need much sleep. And we also had stuff from Bolair of that character saying that they're like, oh, I don't sleep much and I don't need to breathe, etc. So Bolea could, like, I've seen a theory that Bolea could be an elf. My personal feeling is that whatever mask Bolea put on gives them the property of a like automaton, like no, not breathing, probably doesn't need to eat, etc. I think they also have a similar thing where they don't need much rest, or they can enter a kind of suspended state just like an elf. So because earlier there's a whole thing with Boleo's auto flipper thing that they were reading whatever from. Uh, yeah, so interesting parallel there is that they're both characters that didn't need much sleep, so perhaps they could be elves. Who knows? But in terms of ending group, ending table, I think it's a little bit of a tough. It's hard to know. I think it's so kind of predicting motivation from this early on episode. If the Seekers are mainly going to be going against the noble houses institutionally, then that doesn't make sense for Valus. If the soldiers are like fighting against whatever group, murdered Thiazi more directly, then that doesn't make sense for Valus. If the schemers are also going against, like, okay. So if the Nightstone, wherever the Nightstone or the ends up, that's where Valus is going to be. And so that, with that being said, I think the most likely group with the Nightstones is going to be the soldiers, because they're going after the Crow Keepers. Of course, that's going off our current information. It could be a bait. I expect it to be a bait, because it kind of doesn't make sense why these random mafia guys would take down Thiazi. But I digress. I think I have to put Valus in Soldier, because that's the only one that I could see making sense. If there's some other big celestial lore drop that connects Valus, she could end up being a Seeker. Or if there's, it's still a little bit unclear what the objective of the schemers would be. So anything could happen there, but a little bit question mark, but I'm going to put her a soldier for now. All right. Moving on. We have Julian, who also had another interesting episode, and also had kind of a more interesting trajectory of narrative arc, kind of like Wick. In my first reaction video, I put Wick and Julian as being the highest in terms of vibes I liked, and Julian ended up being like more interesting just because I didn't expect this kind of dissonance in moral code between Julian and his father, right? Like, kind of the first episode set up, Julian was definitely dissonant in moral code with the lady Anessa, with Anessa, which made sense. And I thought Julian was kind of representative of, like, not just his opinion, but like the general house opinion that they didn't like the Aussie, because the Aussie literally betrayed them and fought against them. But it seems like Julian's father is supportive of the Aussie, at least moral code. So perhaps it's more of it's less so political position, or I guess I should say the house values like honor, morality, loyalty. Julian values, it's kind of more ambitious, I suppose, or values the standing of the house over personal honor, perhaps, is the dynamic, because in episode 1, Julian's very much like, oh, I'm trying to rise this house from the ashes and kind of regain standing, and I have to take down Thiazi because he betrayed the house. And this next episode, it's like, oh, the father's like, even though Diazi betrayed us, he was so honorable, and I did not support you killing him or hunting him down and turning him in, which it's very interesting dynamic. And of course, we get kind of a typical crash out, I guess, from Julian. He's very upset with his father and their differing beliefs, but he gets pulled up and sent away. He could also end up being in the combat next episode because he was supposedly sent directly to check on these crow keepers, right? I think that's what happened. Anyway, he could show up, and in terms of table that Julian would end up in, I know they're ambiguous. In my head, beginning this episode, I thought I had a more clear pinpoint for a lot of these characters, but talking about it, getting my thoughts out, it's kind of making me waver. So, episode 1, I would have told you slam dunk, almost. Julian's a schemer because he's scheming to get his house's honor back, or house's standing back. But now it's like, oh well, he's not really in control of his destiny so much as his father is, and is sending him to do whatever. So maybe he's forced to buddy in the soldier group and get things done there. I don't know. I personally still am gonna put him schemer, just because simply but from process of elimination is that I think some of these other characters make more sense as soldiers. And yeah. Or perhaps, well, we'll see. Schemer, or it could be schemer or soldier. I don't see Seeker. It doesn't seem like Julian's interested in the lore. He definitely seems like, I guess, in terms of how they resolve conflict, maybe like Julian's hunting of Thiazi was more soldier coded than schemer coded. Like, he didn't plot his downfall. He didn't support his base and get a coup or something. I don't know. We'll come back to it once these other characters are placed. So, Thaija Thor. God, how did I mess Abria's character? I'm just gonna say Abria's character because I already messed up this name. Abria's character. Another kind of lower action character this episode. Mostly just was there to touch magic objects and get get hit with the consequences. Dropping unconscious, no serious harm, I suppose, but it was pretty funny at the beginning, where like, oh, this coffin that I was told not to open and I dragged all the way here, I'm just gonna open it. I'm just gonna touch it. Whoops. I really liked the Bolaire and Taija's kind of confrontation. That Bolaire was like, yeah, don't touch magic objects. Don't do stuff without being prepared. That's the main difference, Kind of a hypocrite later because he does open the coffin with Murray, but at least they were in a prepared environment. For all they know, there could be a freaking rampaging celestial sealed in that box or something, or some kind of huge magic nuke. Really, kind of obviously a dumb idea. All the characters acknowledge it, but I suppose that's the main trait of Abria's character right now, is that they are poking their will into the scene. They're trying to talk with animals on this weird companion. They're poking the magic object. They're trying to set up the characters romantically, and they're trying to be this I guess mentor character that pushes everyone. That's the main vibe right now. In terms of motivation, I'm still lost. I have no clue what she's gonna try and be, what her goals are in the world of Iman. Like, I guess she's in with the rebellion. She's in with this Torn Banner, Falconers, Rebellion, whatever. She's in that group. That much is clear. But she's not really a soldier, right? She's not really. Maybe she's a seeker. Maybe she's a schemer. Hard to place is the name of the game here. I think. I will put. I think I'll put seeker. I don't know. I really don't know. But maybe this would make sense. Has she been in? I don't expect her and Hal to be in the same group. They don't seem like they're set up to be that way. At the same time, yeah, I guess Octus and Taisha. There we go. It's Taisha. I think that's the pronunciation. Octus and Taisha or have a dynamic, so I see them being in the same group. Yeah, so I'll end up at Seeker, but yeah, that's the main vibes from Taisha. So Azune, the main scene that stood out to me for Azune was at the barracks and doing this, kind of communicating that like this child soldier mentality of always being alert and on duty. That was really effectively communicated, and then tying that in with being confronted with this noble house guy trying to privatize the militia or privatize the police to basically give the noble house more control over the city. Yeah, and then the other interesting thing was this whole idea of like arcane martial, kind of bringing in the importance of the arcane marshals, and like, oh, that I guess the noble houses are not equipped to look for arcane. That is a blind spot. Or perhaps it's a rarer skill that they can't easily fulfill. Maybe it's something to do with it. You need to be like a veteran of these wars, or someone that, you know, is really experienced with the arcane is hard to come by. Although you'd think that the population would be teeming with veterans of all these wars that have been happening in recent history. But hard to place. Another character that I get strong vibes from the character. Just they haven't had the chance to do much yet. They haven't been able to be heroic. They just are like, yep, I'll check out my routes and I'll get things done. Bam. End of story. He goes and changes his patrol route, and then he talks to this noble, and that's the last we hear about him from this episode. So vibes are still good, but not a lot to work with. So in terms of table they'll end up in, I think the main vibe is soldier. So I'm gonna put soldier, just because it's child soldier. They were in the opening war scene with Thimble and I think it was Thimble and Taor, right? Oh no, yeah, it's Thimble. I think it was it 4? It was Thimble, Cadigan, Azune, and Taor were in the opening military scene. Man, I just watched this and it's still already foggy, but yeah, I think that sounds right for the veteran crew. So I could see them all being set, like a lot of these characters would be set up together, you know, Thimble and Cadigan and Azune. Maybe that's a low-hanging fruit, and they're going to try and avoid that, but we'll see. Now, last but not least is Taor. Had, you know, more to do than Azune, but still was kind of sidelined in that he had this whole scene where he showed up to Wick's family house and asked to be on the guard, and it seemed to be a success, and then the mother vetoed it. But then it seemed like continuity seemed weird, just because after the mother vetoed it, they were like talking about Wick. Oh, what else do you do for the day? And Brennan goes, oh, you do prepare Taor to join the guard. So maybe it was kind of a lapse of judgment. There were a lot of these kind of minor narrative quibbles. Like there was in a scene where uh, Taylor was talking to his mentor. So, suddenly Robbie was like, "Oh, I leave the scene," but I think it was described that Taylor and his mentor left the building, so Cadigan wasn't in the scene. But I guess that was lost. Which characters are in which scene were a little bit confused, as well as like there was some. I think there was like some rules problems. What was it? I have a memory of like Brennan looking up. Maybe it's for the identify spell. There was some looking up of what exactly it was described. Something like I saw him typing on his computer. And I was like, oh, he's looking up a spell description. But yeah, there was some narrative kind of things going on, and Brennan kept it rolling. That was the rule of the night. It was like even when there's a scene that's being held up, like there was a couple scene where Tierney and Wick were kind of going back and forth with their dynamic, but Brennan was like, we got a lot to get through, so he forced the hand of like moving the scene along. And then there's the scene where everyone was like, oh, do we trust Valus to be in on the fold? And then the NPC character was like, yes, I think our goals align, so let's move on. That kind of thing. A little bit. It's hard to make a judgment if it's an overstep in these early episodes, just because there's so many characters and Brennan's definitely focused on moving along and getting to everybody. But if that kind of thing happens in like a later episode, that is a characteristic of like a Dimension 20 campaign and not a Critical Role campaign, is that Brennan will move the plot along. But in these huge 3-hour plus sessions, usually we have a little bit more time to burn on the characters. But I still appreciate that Brennan is willing to push characters towards action when it seems like they're petering out, or they're getting lost in their own definitions, because movement and action is always good. It keeps it flowing. Anyway, back to Taylor. Yeah, so we had the scene where he showed up, he propositioned for guard duty or guard detail, got turned down, but didn't get turned down maybe, and then that was his main thing. I guess his big thing was also talking to his mentor, and we're phasing out this DMPC mentor character that everyone's talking about. There sure are a lot of, in this overture, there sure are a couple NPCs that are very, very important people. Sir, the Aussie and I forget the other mentor guy who everyone's like, oh, he's a honored veteran. I know that guy. Probably just like a little bit of a softball to move the events along, as well as be a quick reference that if Brendan needs to go, oh, Taylor is related to this PC, or this Thimble's related to the Aussie, kind of have more interconnectedness to push their characters forward. But so Taylor, what group? I mean, getting the banner thing or getting the torn banner thing, like, makes me think, oh, he's gonna carry on the legacy and be a soldier. At the same time, the setting up character position wise, it seems to be like, if I assume the Wick plotline is the Schemer plotline, then Taylor is definitely kind of moving with them. So maybe it's something like, it's either like this, and we have all these characters, or it's something like this, or moving Julian around, because I'm pretty unsure. Or it could be something like boom, 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 Taylor and the soldier kind of deal. But Taylor is the kind of character that could end up in either of them, just because I feel like he's intelligent enough to be a seeker. He cares about details and is trying to, fight back against these noble houses. He is schemer. He's set up to fight against these houses in like a more indirect way. He's a soldier. He's literally a veteran. Lots of directions. But I will end up like this. Maybe putting Matthew Mercer in soldier, as well as there's the other possibility is, Matt wants to be with Marisha, in which case I think they'll have to be Seeker, because I feel like Murray's clearly Seeker. But I will end up, I think it'd be cool as a schemer, so I'm going to put him schemer. There we go. So this is my final prediction. One of these groups is going to have 5 people, because that's how it shakes out. This is my guess. I could easily see one of these guys being Soldier being the 5-player group, but who knows? Overall, hopefully you can tell I enjoyed the episode. Lots of cool plot reveals and lots of interesting developments for these characters, and I'm excited to see how this overture concludes in the 2 episodes. I assume next episode will be a big chunk of combat, and then like maybe it'll be 2 combats or something. Like we're gonna have this combat with Robbie, Thimble, Valus, and Octus, but like maybe they'll also they might make it the combat episode and have another, like maybe I don't think Wick and Tyranny could win a combat, but maybe something else could happen that drives these characters to roll initiative. It could also just be like kind of a quick once and done combat. Like these Crow Keepers do not seem very important right now. Obviously they might be involved with this Nightstone. I kind of doubt it, because that would be too obvious, but there you go. Anyway, yes, so good episode. Thank you for joining me. If you have any ideas for stuff to put on the screen while I'm talking, I've been liking doing these tier maker kind of visual representation of my thoughts. I think that helps me communicate, but I can't see this being sustainable if I keep doing episodes. Like I'm not going to be the tier list. I'm not going to make a tier list every episode. That seems ridiculous. But if you have an idea, like, oh, you want to see Subway Surfer in the corner while I'm talking, you need that dopamine, then let me know. But thanks for listening if you made it this far, and I hope to do this again.